She had never imagined herself as a pirate, and she certainly hadn't planned on becoming a king. But sometimes life has a way of mocking our plans. For many years before she was conceived, her parents, the emperor and empress, were childless. And despairing that he might never have an heir, the emperor went out in search of an answer. He left his palace in the east and traveled west. At the same time, a king and queen in the west despaired over their empty cradle. And so the king went out to seek answers. He left his castle in the west and headed east. And as has to happen in a story like this, the two rulers met in a cave where dwelt a wise sage. "You will both soon become fathers, a daughter for the emperor, a son for the king. Well, if it happens as he says, our children should wed." Indeed, they are destined to wed, and if anything should keep them apart, many will suffer. Well, the two men agreed to the betrothal of their as yet unconceived children, and they headed home. Within the year, the sage's predictions came true. The empress gave birth to a daughter, Princess Judith, and the queen to a son, Prince Zev. Now, you know the kind of fuss the birth of a royal baby can cause. It's possible that in all that excitement, promises were forgotten. But when Judith came of a certain age, her father decided she would have the best education possible. She would study with the sage who had predicted her birth. The king decided that there was only one man fit to teach his son, the selfsame sage. And so, unbeknownst to their parents, Princess Judith and Prince Zev met. They became good friends, bonding over shared reading, arguing matters of philosophy. And when their years of study came to an end, they realized they were more than friends. They couldn't bear the thought of being parted. And so they went home with the intention of convincing their fathers that they should be allowed to wed. Neither one of them expected this to be an easy task. And you don't expect the course of true love to run smoothly, do you? Where would the story be in that? Indeed, when Judith arrived home, it was to discover that her father was planning her wedding. The husband he had chosen was a rich man with whom he wished to be more closely allied. Judith did her best to dissuade, to delay, hoping that Zev would soon be there. Zev was struggling with how to approach his powerful father. The queen, though, sensed that something was bothering her son. She couldn't get any answers from him, so she went to the servant who had accompanied the prince on his studies, and she learned of Princess Judith. When she told her husband, a memory clicked in place in his mind. Well, this is perfect. And he sent Zev off with a letter of introduction and gifts for the emperor. The emperor was not pleased to see Zev. The emperor thought his match was much better. And yet, he didn't dare refuse Zev outright. He couldn't afford bad relations with a king. "You'll have to prove to me that you're worthy to rule my realm. Do a few tasks. Once Once you have those done, then we'll talk about marriage. And he locked Zev away in a dusty office, not even letting Judith know he was there. Zev did well enough with the tasks, but for every one he completed, the emperor came up with 2 more. Then one day, Judith chanced to see Zev's reflection in a mirror. Zev was so overcome to be reunited, he almost swooned. They decided they would have to run away. Zev arranged for a sailboat, and they slipped away by moonlight. After a few days of sailing, they came upon a wooded shore, and they decided to stop to hunt and gather. Judith climbed the tall fruit trees near the shore and tossed fruit down to Zev. And as she was perched in the top of a tree, a ship came by. It was captained by the son of a merchant. He was on his first voyage in charge of one of his father's ships. His cargo hold was filled with kegs of rum. He was just imagining how impressed his father was bound to be when the first mate came running up. "There's a beautiful woman in a tree." The merchant's son took the spyglass for himself. When Judith saw the ship change course and come towards her, she realized what was going on. "Zev, they'll kill you to get to me. You need to run. You need to hide. I'll go with them. I can keep myself safe. But I'll be alive, and so will you. We'll find each other." And although it felt like a very unprince-like thing to do, Zev listened to her advice and hid. "Maiden alone on the shore, come down from that tree." "I don't think so." "What's your name?" "I won't tell you." "Come down. Let me take you away from here. Sail with me on my ship." "I'd rather not." "Don't make me chop down that tree." "I'll come, but I have conditions. I won't tell you my name. And you cannot touch me until we reach your home city." Well, that was more disappointing. But Judith was very beautiful, and he agreed. She climbed down from the tree and went aboard his ship. It didn't take the merchant's son long to realize she was more than just beautiful. She was interesting to talk to. She was well read. She had opinions. She could speak several languages, and she sang like an angel. "I'm going to marry you." And if Judith was thinking, "Oh, no, you're not," she was careful not to let it show. "It doesn't change my conditions." "Fine." When they reached his home harbor, Judith said, "It wouldn't do to spring me on your parents. You should go ahead and let them know about me." Well, the merchant's son could see the wisdom in that, and he agreed. "While you're gone, why don't you let me open up one of those kegs of rum? Let's let the sailors celebrate. It was a good crossing. They can drink a toast to our upcoming nuptials." And so they took a keg of rum onto the shore, and Judith poured cup after cup after cup of rum, until at last those sailors were drooping in drunken drowsiness. Then Judith sang those sailors to sleep. She climbed aboard the ship, hoisted the anchor, unfurled the sails, and was off, 'a maiden alone on the sea.' Whether she sailed for days or whether she sailed for weeks, I couldn't say. But she passed by a castle built close to the sea. When the lookouts there saw what appeared to be a ship sailing unmanned, they rowed out to investigate and brought Judith back by force. Now, the king of this land had never married. The women who had appealed to him hadn't been interested. And the ones who were interested in him just didn't appeal. So he'd never married. But Judith appealed. "I will make you my queen." And a part of Judith was tempted. The life of a queen would be easier than sailing a ship alone, searching for a man she might never find. "I have conditions. I will not tell you my name until we are married." What did a name matter? "And you cannot touch me until we are married." "Very well. You may not look in my ship. My cargo will be my wedding gift to you. That way no one can say that I came into this marriage a pauper. And I'd like ladies in waiting. 6 might do." Well, the king arranged for a silver palace for Judith to stay in until the wedding. And he found 11 daughters of the most noble families in the land to be her companions. The night before the wedding, Judith invited those 11 young ladies on board her ship for a celebration. She opened a keg of rum and poured cup after cup, though not so many cups as it had taken with the sailors. Soon those young ladies were hiccuping and head-bobbing. Judith sang them to sleep, hoisted the anchor, unfurled the sails, and was off, a maiden no longer alone on the sea. As you can imagine, when those young ladies recovered their wits, Judith did encounter some resistance, but soon they were laughing, enjoying the freedom of being at sea. They sailed on and eventually came to an island. And Judith's friends begged to be allowed to go ashore. Well, Judith remembered only too clearly what had happened the last time she came close to land, and she tried to tell them no, but they begged so prettily that she gave in. It turned out that island was not uninhabited. It was the hideaway of a group of buffoons, pirates. And when they saw that their hideout had been breached, that their treasure trove had been discovered, they were ready to slit the throats of Judith and her companions. But Judith said, "You're pirates? We're pirates. You have treasure. We have treasure. You rob with your strength. We rob with our wits. What a team we would make. We'll show you ours if you show us yours." And when those pirates saw that treasure of kegs of rum, they became much more amenable to a partnership. The captain of the pirates did a quick count. "We'll each bed one of you." "I'll drink to that," said Judith. And they opened 2 kegs of rum and poured cup after cup after cup after cup of rum. And whether Judith and her friends sang those pirates to sleep, or whether they sent them to their eternal rest, I'll leave you to decide. But they took the treasure, so much of it that they had to throw many of those barrels of rum overboard. They sailed off, and Judith said to her friends, "It's too much trouble going about as women. We should go as men." And they cut up their fine gowns and sewed breeches. So the next time they came to land, they weren't afraid to go ashore as men. They came to a busy city port. In fact, it seemed that every man in the city was crowded around the castle. Judith hurried over to ask one of them what was going on when something landed on her head. And suddenly the men around her were turning. "Hail the king! Long live the king!" It seems the king in that land had died. And as was the custom, his counselors had taken his crown to the roof of the castle and tossed it. Whichever man it landed on would become the new king. Judith and her men were hustled into the throne room. The counselors looked at Judith. "Our new king must marry the queen." The queen looked at Judith. "Our new king is very young. He doesn't even shave yet. Perhaps he should marry the princess." Well, you might be wondering why Judith didn't simply reveal the truth of her identity. But there are still places in the world where a woman who disguises herself as a man is severely punished. What was she to do? Risk revealing the truth? Try to bring the princess in on the deception? Live her life as a lie? She couldn't keep the secret in a marriage bed. "Certainly," said Judith, "I would be delighted to marry the princess, but there's no need to rush. Give my subjects time to get used to their new king. In fact, have a bust of my likeness made. Put it at the entrance to the city, and watch over it. If anyone reacts very strongly to the sight, bring them here to me." 3 people reacted strongly to the sight of that bust. One was the merchant's son. When his father learned that he had lost the ship and its entire cargo, he had disowned him. And the merchant's son had been wandering the world in search of his ship. Another was the king who had wanted to marry Judith. When the nobles of his court found out he had lost 11 of their daughters, they had deposed him. And a third was Prince Zev. But not one of them recognized Judith. They saw before them the king they expected to see. Judith removed her crown and the cloth covering her long hair. "You wanted to marry me," she said to the merchant's son. "But to you I was a prize to impress your father. You can take your ship back. It's filled with a far better cargo than the one we took. Give that to your father. He'll welcome you back." She turned to the king. "You wanted to marry me, but to you I was just a pretty decoration. This kingdom is in need of a king. Perhaps if the queen or princess would have you, you might rule together." And then she looked at Zev. "You wanted to marry me. Do you still?" "Yes, more than ever, yes." "Then let's be married and go home to our families." And as for those 11 young ladies, well, what do you think? Did they go home or sail on?